And we are live. Lebo, introduction. Maybe you want to start? I don't know if there's some issue with Mike, but I'll just go ahead and do it. So
Yes,
welcome
Askam.
to.
So my name is, I'm
Sorry.
here.
Okay. Cool.
Can you hear me? Oh, I had
Yeah.
already started, unless, okay, great. So welcome everyone to Let's Learn.net, Africa Developer Audience GTM. And I'm here with Homo. Homo, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Homo. I am a Power Apps Cloud advocate here at Microsoft. But I don't just do Power Apps. I do .NET Dev as well with the whole Fusion Dev use cases with the Power Platform. And yeah, I can't wait to share some AI lessons with .NET. Lebo, are you?
Yeah, I'm here. So there seems to be a bit of a delay. I'm not sure if it's network issues. I'm really crossing
Okay.
thumbs that if either of us has load shedding, that it doesn't affect the stream tonight. And for everyone that's just joined us, today we'll be focusing on generative AI. So if you're new to AI or new to the concept of generative AI, this is a good session for you to join in. We'll be starting off with the basics and then moving on to some demos, which Homo will be doing for us. So please stay with us. It's going to be very interactive. Use the chat, whether you're joining us from Twitch or YouTube, do ask the questions. We've got our awesome moderator, Somadeza Diko, who's here with us as well. So we'll make sure that we get to as many questions as possible. And yeah, let us know where you're joining us from. So I see there's a couple of people from South Africa. We've got people from Ghana. Oh, and Uganda is in the house today as well. So very warm welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining. So it's a friendly place, so let's all be kind. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Ask any question, we'll answer it. And if we don't know, we'll ask. We've got an awesome team with us as well. So don't be afraid. Feel free. Let's make it as interactive as possible. So if you are going to join us today, make sure you've got your Microsoft Learn account open. And two things that you will need to get started is just some C# programming experience. So you don't have to be an expert, but because this is specifically tailored for .NET, having some C# programming experience will be to your advantage. And then you will also need some basic familiarity with Azure OpenAI Service. If you haven't as yet played around with Azure OpenAI Service, do not fear. Homo is also going to introduce you to the Azure OpenAI Studio portal and explain to you how everything works. So be here with us. And if you haven't signed up for Azure OpenAI, we'll also share that link so that you can get signed up to the service. The learning objectives for today's session will be to understand Azure OpenAI workloads and generative AI models, to learn how to use Azure OpenAI along with the .NET SDK, and to gain a foundational understanding of Azure OpenAI completions. And we will also share some tips on improving the completion quality. Okay. So as I shared, our agenda is aligned with our learning objectives. So we will kick off with an overview of Azure OpenAI and why Azure OpenAI. I know a lot of you know OpenAI, but some of you don't understand what we might mean by Azure OpenAI or why you would want to build using the Azure OpenAI service. So we will share a little bit on that. We'll get into basics of generative AI as well as text completions, and then work with text completions in Azure OpenAI. We also have a couple of exercises which we'll do together. These exercises are available for you so that you can join us in this hands-on lab. So the first exercise will be installing the .NET SDK for Azure OpenAI and creating your first app. After that, we will start learning about understanding prompts so that you can improve your completion quality. And then the last exercise we will conclude with is improving the completion quality. Okay, so OpenAI models, we've got them, so some of you might know the ChatGPT OpenAI model, which is based on GPT as a model, and that's for text, generated models. And then we've got models like DALL-E, which are for images. So if you haven't played around with that, we also have some very, very cool easy and creative juices going with that. We'll share the link in the chat for everyone to access. And we also have a lot more models like the Whisper models. So there are many, many models in OpenAI, right? But then now, what you might be asking yourself is, why would someone want to use the OpenAI models that are available directly on OpenAI so the beauty of Azure OpenAI or having the OpenAI models available on Azure is that we are giving you that security benefit. So you don't have to worry about any security issues, so you can build with security in mind, or maybe let me put it this way, security by design. Okay, so at Microsoft, we love OpenAI, and the two work really, really well together and they complement. So just going back to that introduction where we were speaking about different models, some of you know the chat because you've played around with it, but I don't know how many of you know about the image creator that's actually powered by DALL-E, So if you like me and you're a very visual person, you might appreciate actually playing with these models before actually applying your own innovation and trying to build with them. So Gomolemo is going to show you how to build with them. But if you want to visually understand what the different models do, we will be sharing them in the chat and broadcasting them into the stream so that you can play around with them. So the first one is Mohapi. So I'm gonna just paste it in the chat. This is me being a little bit rogue. It's not part of the script, but I just thought sometimes, someone wants to be able to see something, see how it works before they start building on it, So if you visit designer.microsoft.com, there you will get to create your own describing what it is that you want, and it would be able to generate an image for you. So that image generation is actually powered by an OpenAI model known as DALL-E. Okay. Um, yeah, so I'm then gonna move on to the Azure OpenAI Studio because I really want you to get started really quickly. So I'm gonna bring back my friend Gomolemo, who's going to show you and walk you through the Azure OpenAI Studio. So he will be opening up the portal itself, take you through the actual portal. So it looks exactly similar to the Azure portal as you know it. And there you will learn as to where do you go if you want to make use of the DAL-E model, where do you go if you want to make use of the GPT model, and so forth. So over to you, Homo.
Sure. Let me go ahead and bring that window up. Just let me know if you can see it. Am I in Azure at the moment? I think we are. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to just show you how to create a basic resource inside of the Azure portal so that we can use the Azure OpenAI service. As we've just explained now, there are three main models with regards to the GPT model, the Codex model, as well as the DALL-E image creation model. And all of those are OpenAI models. But then when we talk about Azure OpenAI, it's trying to leverage these OpenAI models with the Azure platform. So using the capabilities of AI with the scalability, with the security of Azure, and using those with those enterprise grade apps. So what we are going through at the moment are learn modules from this learn collection, and we will put a link to this in the chat. But everything that I'll be showing you here will be in these things, and you can do them on your own after this. So for now, we're going to just be exploring Azure OpenAI, and as I am said, you can view this on your own if you want to go through these models yourself. The only thing is that you need to have access to the Azure OpenAI service inside of Azure, and you can apply for that access if you follow this link. So aka.ms/OAI apply. And then after a few days, you should get access to those models so you can use them yourself. So what we'll do is back inside of Azure, we need to create a Azure OpenAI resource. But first, we actually need to create a resource group. So I actually have created a resource group here called Let's Learn. And then from here, we can then go ahead and create that Azure OpenAI resource. So I'll just, I clicked on the create button. And then what we can do from here, we'll just search for Azure OpenAI. There you go. So once that loads up, we will see it in our marketplace here. Let's go ahead and create a resource. I'll click on create. And then it'll prompt me for a few things there. So one, I need to have the subscription where I have access to these AI models, as well as the resource group. And then we can select any one of these regions that we have. And then we'll also give it a name. So what I'll do is I'll just call it Let's Learn Azure OpenAI. And then the pricing tier, there is only one pricing tier at the moment, so you'll be using that standard tier over there. So then, once we've finished filling in those details there, we'll click on next, review the content, and then we'll just create it. And that should take a few seconds to create the resource for us. But again, as that is creating, let's go back to the instructions here. And again, like I said, everything is outlined specifically in detail for you, so that once we create that resource, we will then go into Azure AI Studio and show you how to play with some of those deployments as well. So while that's creating, that should take a couple of seconds. Let me just go ahead and refresh that just to see where is it coming from. It's still going. What I will do is the link that will be displayed on the screen now is the link to the collections that we have. And this specific exercise is part of the introduction to Azure OpenAI service. And this allows you to really find out what it is you need to know about things like generative AI, about Azure OpenAI, and every single one of the three main models that Azure OpenAI gives you, specifically the natural language models such as GPT, the code generation models such as the Codex model that is used to understand and generate code. And then we have, as Lebo said, the DAL-E model that allows you to create images from basic descriptions. Another thing which is important is to understand the responsible AI practices. There are certain principles that you have to know when it comes to using content that has been created by AI. For example, making sure that the AI models or the AI content is reviewed by a human before you use them in an app, in a service, or before you expose some of that data to other people. So it's very important that you understand the various responsibilities that we have with AI generated content. And then if I just go back, and then the actual exercise that we're doing now is found in this Learn module as well. As long as you have an active Azure subscription and access to Azure OpenAI, you should be good to go. And with that, let's go back to our deployment here. You see it is completed. So let's go to the resource. And then as we're in the resource, you can create models in the actual Azure portal, but I think it would be best for us to go to the Azure OpenAI Studio, which you can access by simply clicking that link. Or if you want, if you just go to oai.azure.com, it'll take you to the same place. So this is sort of like the playground for us to work with the models that we create with Azure OpenAI. So there's various playgrounds. So there's chats, there's the completions, as well as the DAL-E preview models. But then in this section, which I want to take you to, is the management section. So let's go to our models. And here we can see the list of models that we have access to that we can create inside of the Azure AI Studio. So let's go ahead and choose the GPT 3.5 Turbo model. That is the most stable model at the moment. You can use other models, but again, you need to know what each model is used for specifically before you go ahead and do that. So let's click that one. We'll click on deploy, and then let's have a deployment name. So let's just call it GPT Let's Learn, right? And then we'll create a deployment with the backing of the GPT-0.35 model. Once that is done, we can go to the deployments tab and we can see the model that we have. And once you have that deployed model, we can then access the playground and use the various benefits here. For example, the chat playground here, you have an interface where you can chat with the AI. What's great with this is that you can use certain system message templates. Now, when speaking about OpenAI, we have different roles. We have a system role, we have a user role, and we have an assistant role. We will cover more of those in depth a bit later on. But for example, let's go ahead and choose the Xbox customer system role. And you can see that there's a system message, right? You are an Xbox customer agent whose primary goal is to help the users basically around the Xbox devices. That system role makes sure that whenever we add a chat, right, then the chat session, let's refresh that. I see it's not loading up my deployment. That's how you know that this is indeed live. So let's go and add that one more time. Let's choose another one. Continue. Okay, that should be good. Right. And I'm seeing that there's okay, so I think because the deployment is quite new, so it's not registering at the moment. But I think you get like the basic picture of it, that once you have a deployment ready, you can then use the chat interface to interact with that. You also have the completions tab as well as the DAL-E image creation here. So for example, let's see if this one works. I could say things like robots eating pasta. Let's click on generate, and then hopefully that should generate a model for us. So all of this is reliant on us creating a model first and then deploying that model into our system. And then we can use that model later in a .NET Core project. But before we do that, I'm going to go back to Lebo, who will explain some of the other concepts we need to understand before we go to .NET.
Thank you, Homo. Like I was so focused that I forgot that I'm co-hosting this with you. So I was actually just following along on the side myself. So now that you guys have been introduced to Azure OpenAI Studio, I hope you have it open and that you're comfortable. So I'm just quickly going to recap the functionalities of it. Enables you to build the AI models and deploy them for public consumptions in your applications. And you can take advantage of Azure OpenAI's capabilities, which are really made possible by the specific generative AI models. So depending on what you want to achieve, you can use the different models, which are optimized for different tasks. Some models excel at summarization. Others provide general unstructured responses, whereas others are built to generate code or unique images from text input. So we emphasized a lot on DAL-E as well as GPT-3, but I know a lot of you know that GPT-4 is now also available. So that has models that represent the latest generative models for natural language and code. So that is like a level higher than the GPT 3.5. And then for embeddings, in case you want to do comparing of sources of text for similarity. I know a lot of academic institutions rely on software to be able to test for stuff like plagiarism. So you can also look at embedding models that convert text to numeric vectors for analysis, and that can help you compare sources of text for similarity. And yeah, so generative AI models always have a probability which reflects their true values, right? So higher performing models, such as models that have been fine-tuned for specific tasks, do a better job of returning responses that reflect true values. So it's very important for you to review the output of the generative AI models. So as you train your models, you'll be able to see the score there as to how known as the confidence level, so that probability is like the model's confidence level. So in Azure OpenAI Studio, you can experiment with the different OpenAI models in the playground, and the completions playground. That's where you can then type your prompts like Homo was doing, showing us there. You can configure the parameters that you want and see the responses without having to do any code. And in the chat playground, so the menu on Azure OpenAI Studio, if you really check on the left, I know now we're just showing a snapshot, but if you check on the left-hand side, it's got the list of the different playgrounds there. So with the chat playground, you can then use the assistant setup to instruct the model about how you it should behave, right? So the assistant will try and mimic the responses you include, for example, the tones and the rules and the formats that you've defined in your system message. So to see all of that in action, we are going to head on into our first exercise. So as Gomolemo has shared, everything we are doing here is already available for you to try and follow on Microsoft Learn. So without any further ado, we're going to do our text completion exercise.
Right. Let's get
Perhaps
started.
maybe. Okay.
Sorry? Okay, cool. That's fine. I
So
was just saying that.
yeah. So what I was thinking is maybe. Okay, let me pause. I think there's a delay. You were saying?
No, it's fine. I was just saying that I'll get started with the demo using Azure OpenAI inside of a .NET app. Is that fine?
Yes, but please start with a text completion demo.
Okay, no, that is fine. That's fine. So let's go ahead. So I'm back in the studio now. I'm just gonna test if first of all if my chat demo will work. Let's go ahead and clear the chat. Let's go back to the Xbox customer agent system message, and then let's type in how much is an Xbox. Let's go ahead and enter that, and hopefully that can come back with a response. So again, the role of the system message here, it tells the model how it needs to act when people are asking it questions. And that is important when you're trying to regulate the type of responses one might get. But in terms of the completions, I think for this, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be actually showing how to do it inside of .NET so that we can see how that sort of relationship works there. So with that, the exercise that we're focusing on again is on Microsoft Learn. The link will be displayed once more for those who don't have it as yet. But first, we will be installing the .NET SDK for Azure OpenAI, and then we'll be creating the first app with the model that we have just deployed. So again, prerequisites here is an active Azure subscription. You need to have access to the Azure OpenAI models. This is a limited access, so you can follow this link to access those. And then you need to have the Azure CLI installed. For this specific use case, it is preferred to have this, but if you prefer using the portal, that is totally fine. So with this, the first set of instructions here, let's go up and let me just choose the Azure CLI. The first set of instructions here, it makes us create a resource and deploy a model. So similar to what I did in the previous demo in the portal where I created my Azure OpenAI resource, and then I went into the Azure OpenAI Studio and I created that model. You can do the same thing via the CLI. So for example, if you have some sort of terminal, let me bring this here, you can then copy this text, paste it in, and if you're logged into Azure, it will create those resources for you. So I've already done that, so we're not going to go through that now. But the reason why you might want to use this instead of the actual portal is that the portal changes very, very often. And you might come in the 1 week and it's different from what you saw the last week. Whereas the Azure CLI, is almost always constant. So this is like the surefire way to create those resources in Azure, and it's very fast as well. So this first set of instructions here, it creates a resource group called Hiking Conversations. And then the next set of instructions, it creates a Azure AI resource called Hiking Conversations. And it stores that inside of the Hiking Conversations resource group. And then after that, once you have the actual resource, then we need to create a model and deploy that model. Again, you can use the Azure CLI. So it finds the resource group as well as the Azure OpenAI resource that you created in the previous step. And then it creates a GPT 3.5 turbo model named Hiking Recommendation Turbo. So that is the model that we're going to be working with. And just to show you inside the portal that I have indeed done that, I'm going to switch my resource to the Hiking Conversation AI resource. That is the resource that I have created with these steps inside of Learn. All right. Then once you have that, then we need to retrieve two sort of properties to make that initial connection. One is the properties endpoint, right? And then we need the API key. And that's how we can configure the connection to the Azure OpenAI resource. Once we have those, then we can go ahead and get started building our app. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up my command bar once more. Let me actually just open up VS Code and then open up my command prompt. And the first thing to create a .NET project is you're going to use the .NET new console statement here, and we're going to call the console app Hiking Conversation AI, which, if you can see in the background, I have done. And then the next step is we're going to go into that. Let me actually just do this to make things easier. I'll create a .NET app, but just call it 2, just for the sake of this part. So I'll create the console app. You can see it's very fast. Then the next thing, we need to change the directory into that console app. So as you can see, the directory has now changed. Now we are inside of that console app. Then once we're inside that console app, we need to install the Azure AI.OpenAI package. And again, this is all coming from Microsoft Learn. As you can see, let me bring it back. This is coming from the Learn. So everything that I'm doing is inside this module. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the Azure AI OpenAI package. And this prefix is important. This makes us install the preview or the pre-release version, because this package is not yet fully done yet. So you'd need to install the pre-release version. Once you press enter, it will then install that package to the .NET app that you created, right? And then once you're done, of course, you can open up this project in VS Code. So I'll just say code space full stop. That will then open up the specific project that I had inside of VS Code. Now, as you can see, let's open up our CS project. There is our Azure AI OpenAI package installed. And then it is from the program.cs file where we will start to write our code. But I'll just go back to the version that I created originally, and let's start actually building out this .NET app. So first things first, we need to install, or we need to add the using statement so that we can use the package that we've just installed, right? So let's go to program.cs, And I'm going to add 2 using statements. That's using Azure AI.OpenAI, and the second one is using Azure, right? Those are the 2 statements that we need. The second step is we need to add in 3 class level variables that hold the various references that we will be bringing in from the Azure AI Studio. So those variables are here. And then with that, as you can see, my Copilot is running there. So here we have the Azure AI endpoint. So I'll be bringing in that endpoint now. Let me just copy it in. So this is the endpoint to my specific AI resource. Just to make sure that that is the one, what I'll do is I will bring up the Azure OpenAI Studio. Let's open up the Azure portal, and very quickly, if we can find the AI resource and we go to keys and endpoint, this is the endpoints that I was talking about, as well as the keys that we have there. So let's go back to our .NET app. And then obviously I would need to paste my API key over here. I'm going to paste that off screen near the end. Obviously in a more production ready app, we would save those in like a user secret of some kind, but just know that that's where I will be pasting in my API key. Then the next part is, let me get this up again, is creating an instance of the Azure OpenAI resource. So with that, you can see we're creating an endpoint a variable using the endpoint that we grabbed from Azure. Then we have our credentials, which is the OpenAI key, again, from Azure. Then we're creating an instance of the OpenAI client to gain access to the portal using the endpoint and the credentials. Then after that, we're going to be creating the system prompt. And I'll explain what the system prompt is at the moment. But first, let's create a chat completions object class, or object rather. And this is putting in a few config elements to our chat completions options object. The ones that we really have to focus, especially working with AI models or open AI models in general, are the tokens as well as the temperature. In terms of tokens, this is the size of prompt or the size of text that a AI model can create. Every model has its maximum size. You can set that size so you don't have responses that are too big or too wide. And tokens, you can think of, if you're looking at a bunch of text, a token represents a certain syllable. So every syllable in a response or a user prompt makes up a single token. And then the temperature regards to the rate of randomness that a model can come up with. So if you have it at 0, it can spew out all, like random things that sometimes won't even relate to your prompt. And the closer to 1 you get, the more accurate the responses will be. So those are the 2 that you have to look out for. And then what we're going to be doing next is actually creating our system prompt. So again, we spoke very briefly about what this is. This is the prompts that we give to the system. It's once off. So we are telling the system how to act, what they are, what information to give. It's important to be as descriptive as possible. So as you are saying here, we are saying you are a hiking enthusiast who helps people discover fun hikes. you are upbeat and friendly. You ask people what types of hikes they like to take and then suggest some. So again, a system prompt, you tell them what they have to do. You give them a sort of personality. You want to make sure that the type of responses that they are giving is exactly what you want it to do. And then you just close off with some things that it needs to know. Then after creating that system prompt, we then create a new chat message object. So the chat message is a class that is part of the Azure OpenAI SDK there. This, we're going to send in the system message. So the system prompt comes from here, and we attach that system prompt to the chat message. And then we add the system message to the messages list of the completion options class. So now the model knows what our system message is. And after that, we need to initiate the actual chat, right? We need to open it up because Azure AI does not greet us first. We need to greet first. So what we'll do is we'll add in a user greeting. So this is hard coded here. Hi there, hiking recommendation bots. Can't wait to hear what you have in store for me. Once we have that greeting, same thing like the system prompt, we adding it to the chat message, and then we adding that context to the messages class of the completion object, completion options object. And then because it's a console app, we'll just display that user greeting for us there. And after that, we need to call the get chat completion async function. So these are the text completions that we need to call so that we are able to get a response back from the model. So over here, I'll just paste it in. And as we can see, what we are doing is that we are passing in the deployment name, right? The deployment name is here, as well as the completion options. So this contains the system message as well as the user greeting message. And we are passing that in back into the OpenAI client, and we'll be waiting for a response. Then the next step here would be to read out what the response is. Once we've done all those steps, we'll be reading out what that response is. And there's an interesting thing here where we have response.choices. We want the first choice. We want the first message of the first choice. And the reason why we need to choose the number is because, as you know, when you are using ChatGPT or like Bing search to create images or to find out something, there are usually more than one options that it spits out. So in this case, we want to just select the first option. But as some of you might know, there are always more than one responses that it does spit out. Then once we get that response, we will just display it on the console there. So with that, let's open up a terminal and let's run the app and see what we get back. So we'll just have a .NET run statement there. Let's pull this up and we'll see it's bringing in my user text there. Can't wait to hear what you have stored for me. And then the AI comes back and says, hi there, glad to hear you're excited about hiking. What type of hikes do you enjoy? Are you looking for a challenge, a trek, or a leisurely stroll through nature? So if I'm not mistaken there, it did not come with a response because I have not filled in the AI key. So let me go ahead and paste in my key. Let's do it off screen so that no one is using my resource. Let's go ahead and save that again. Let's bring that back down And then we'll bring that in once more. Let's open a terminal window and .NET run. So let's see what it does. There's the response from the user. There's the response from the AI. And then if you were to run this again with the same user prompt there, we'll see that it might bring back something different. As you can see, this is the AI response now, and this was the AI response earlier on. So every time you hit that endpoint, it'll always bring back something different. So it's mindful that you should know that. But now, what we want to do specifically is that we want to improve the prompts that we are giving to the AI model. Or in this case, we want to be able to continue the conversation. So right now, we sort of have a one and done type thing. We have a user greeting and a user response. We want to be able to carry on with the conversation. And for that, we need to be able to add context of what was previously answered to the AI model. And how we do that is we're going to copy this. Let's paste it in here. And as you can see, we're adding the assistance response, the response we got from the AI, to the messages of the completion object options object, meaning we want to carry on the same context. This is what I answered previously. Let's build on that. So once we have that context added, we can then go ahead and create another user role prompt. Again, this is all hard coded. In a real sense, you would have some sort of chat interface to be able to add in your own chats, but this is going to be hard coded for now. So as you can see, I would like a strenuous hike near where I live that ends with a view that is amazing. So that is in response to whatever the AI says. Then we're going to be displaying that message. We're going to be adding it to the chat message and making sure that it's appended to the user role instead of a system role or a assistant role. And then we're going to add the context of that message to the completion options, hopefully getting a response from the OpenAI client in this next line. And then the same thing. We're going to get the first message that comes from the response. We're going to save that in the assistance response variable and then display it on the console there for us. So let's go ahead and run that once more. And then you can see there's the initial user response. Then it takes a bit of time to come back with a response. Oh, I did not save. So that's why I did not get the full context there. Let's go ahead and, wrong .NET run. And let's go ahead and see what it will come up with. So once it's finished running, we'll see the full conversation there. You will have the user saying hi and all of that. Then the AI comes back with a response. Then we have the follow-up message. I would like a strenuous hike near where I live that ends with a view that is amazing. And it is thinking about a response. It doesn't usually take this long, so I will just wait for it. There you go. So it took my second message with the context of what it answered previously, and then created a brand new response that was not at all sort of molded by what we have said. it's just creating a text completion based on all the other context and inputs that it has. So as you can see, there's a very long text about the type of hike that I would like, along with specific, details about the distance, the elevation. Again, I'm not a hiker, so I don't know what all of this means. But the point is, the a text completion API, what it does is it takes input and it just tries to satisfy whatever that input is based on what you have given it, which is sort of different than a chat where it's just a one and done thing. It's you, then it's you, then it's you, and it's. Text completion really tries to understand the context before it spits out some information. So with that, that is how you would add you would use an OpenAI model inside of a .NET app. Again, very simple. It's pretty much straightforward. And what is nice about this is that it is explained very thoroughly inside the Learn module. So again, if we display the link one more time on the screen, you will have access on exactly how to get this done for yourself. So with that, I think we'll jump to Q&A. Were there any questions in chat that haven't been answered specifically? And then we can get going with that.
So I think a lot of the questions were answered, and some we can leave for towards the end. But one thing I wanted to comment on is the question from Dimitri on how you can get access to Azure OpenAI Studio. So Azure OpenAI Studio requires you to have an Azure OpenAI subscription. So a subscription to the Azure OpenAI service. So we've added the link for you to be able to get access to the service. And once your Azure subscription is granted access to the Azure OpenAI service, you should be able to access the Azure OpenAI Studio. So at the moment, you have to apply. So all you need to do is fill in a form, and within a few days, the team will get back to you. So be sure to apply so that you can have access to these amazing models that Homo was demoing to us.
Yeah, sure. And then again, the link to that, I'll paste the link in the chat on how they can access it. And again, it's just a simple form where you'll have to explain the context of why you would want access. You'd have to put in the subscription ID, where you want the access to, and in a couple of weeks you should get an email granting you access. So that's how you can play with the open AI models on Azure. I see some comments. Microsoft does a good job with programming environments. That's a good compliment there. Any other questions? I don't think so.
Oh yeah, so there is one from Pomi who joined late and they were looking for the context. So Pomi, today we are focusing on generative AI and introducing to everyone Azure OpenAI, as well as demos on how to use the different models that are available. So we recommend that you catch up if you really missed out on the action. But without any further ado, I think we can continue Homo, because some questions are generic and maybe we can leave for the end if that's okay.
No, sure. We can do just that. Let me pull up VS Code again because we do have one more exercise to quickly go through.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
So I laughed a bit. So I'm a hiker, and so that output that you had there is just that they were not using the metric system, but the 7 miles was basically saying it's an 11-kilometer hike, and the I think it was 2.6 something there. That was the elevation. So normally, any
Okay.
hiker would assess how great a hike would possibly be or challenging by taking into consideration the distance as well as the elevation the
Sure.
from the ground. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know. I have no idea what it was telling me. So, but that is quite interesting indeed. Um, I think now what we're going to be doing is, again, I'll pull this up on screen to show you as well. This next exercise is a very quick one. It's about improving the completion quality that you are getting back from Azure OpenAI. And the only way to improve the completion quality is by making sure that the prompts that you give it, both the system prompt and the user prompt, is as descriptive as you can. And there's different parts of the prompt which can help you bring out more quality completions from Azure OpenAI. So we'll go back to our code here. And what we'll do is the first thing we need to do is we need to update the system prompt. So let's bring this down here. And our system prompt is way at the top here. Again, it's a great system prompt, but we can do a bit better. So we'll just remove the current text and we will add this prompt. And you can see there's a few things that we have done. First, we've added like a primary statement, right? You are a hiking enthusiast who helps people discover fun hikes in your area, right? That's the primary like context, the primary context of that prompt. Then the next part is describing the type of personality you want the bot to have, right? You are upbeat and you are friendly. Okay. Then we're going to give it some additional context that we wanted to do, right? We wanted to introduce the bot first by saying hi. And then you're going to, when you are helping people out, you're going to always ask them for information to better inform your responses going forward. And the type of information that we want is where the person is located, along with the type of hiking intensity that they are going for. So you need to be as descriptive and direct as possible to really shape the type of responses that you need. And you can go even further by adding more, like this last statement here. You will then provide three suggestions for nearby hikes that vary in length after you get that info. So you're not just telling it the primary context and what to do, you are also rounding that prompt up by saying, once you get the information, you need to do this, right? So it's very specific. And that is what makes a great system prompt. Like I said, it's one and done. It happens once. Once the model understands that prompt, it will live out the rest of its deployment life in the context of that prompt. But then when it also comes to your hiking requests, you also need to be quite specific in what you are asking for it, or else you will just get back a whole bunch of waffle. It'll just start to spew some random things out in the context of the system prompt. So again, I'll be copying this hike request here. Let's go ahead and paste it. And again, as you can see, it is quite descriptive. I live near Seattle and would like a strenuous hike. Again, we had that in the beginning. The view must be good. I don't mind driving for a long time, even if it's over a pass. You might think that this is too much info, but I'm guessing in the context of hiking, it needs to understand that, okay, if some hikes are quite far away from where they are based, then it wouldn't mind recommending those because you said you don't mind driving for a long time. If some hikes have a pass, again, it wouldn't mind recommending that because you explained it so specifically. So you need to be very descriptive in your requests as well. And then let's go ahead and run the app again. Let's not forget to save like the last time. There again, we've saved .NET run. So what's great about GPT based models is that it's not always the code you have to be mindful of. You also have to be mindful of the prompts that you're giving it, the natural language. It is a model that responds to natural language, but you need to make sure that is as descriptive as possible. So again, it's taking that context quite well, and it's trying to resolve. Wow, what a response! This is much more um, this is much more context that it gave previously when our system prompt was not as great and when the user prompt was not as great. So just with a little bit more effort, right, you will begin to get responses that are much more aligned to what you need it to be. I'm sure Lebo is reading this and just making sure that everything is accurate, which I'm sure it's as close to accurate as possible. And then what is great is that you are always able to ask the model to provide a step-by-step accounting of its thought process as well. So you don't just have to get a back and forth respond type of a thing, but also it's good for you as a user to understand how it got to the responses that it spat out. So let's go ahead and once more update the hike request. Let's go ahead and put that down. Let's see. Now we have an added sentence here at the bottom. In the response for each hike, provide a step-by-step accounting of why you picked the hike that you did based off the attributes that I provided above. So again, you will also not just get a response about the 3 best hikes, you will also get a reason why it associated those specific hikes with the attributes that you gave. Again, we're not editing the code in any way. The code works completely fine. We're just fixing up and making sure that the prompts are more accurate to get the responses that we need. So again, let's save that. Let's bring it in again once more. .NET run. Let's wait for that to come up. And the rest is, normal. There's our response with the added context at the very end. And then it should come back with a pretty decent response explaining why it came to each hike recommendation that it gives us. So there you go. Right? So it'll now explain that, hey, this is the hike that I recommend, and then it will further go on to explain why it chose that hike. Again, it's making it in a very conversational way, but if you really try and analyze it, it's trying to put it in the context of the attributes that you want. For example, I don't want the hike to be over 10 miles round trip. It says specifically that this hike is an 8-mile round trip. So again, the more context you give it, the more context it will give back. And that works with any AI model. If you were to use DALL-E and say, I want a pizza, or I want a pizza on top of a elephant. That could give you anything. It could give you a pizza on top of a elephant in space, in a field, in a classroom. But if you specifically say, I want a pizza on top of an elephant, it needs to be dressed in a pink tux, the more context you give, the better responses the AI will give you. So with that, that's the end of the third and final exercise. And let's go back to our screen and see if you have any additional questions from the crowd. How's it looking, Lebo?
So it's looking good. I think while we wait for questions, I just want to, give people tips on writing good prompts.
Sure.
So be specific, leave as little to interpretation as possible, and also restrict the operational space. Like the more descriptive you are by using analogies, the better. And also double down, right? So sometimes you might need to repeat yourself a little bit to the model and give instructions before your actual primary content. So use the instructions as a cue to help you, to help the model, give you what you want, basically, or to train it in order to give you what you want. And order matters when it comes to prompts. So the order in which you present the information to the model may affect the output. So if you put instructions before your content, for example, let's say you say summarize the following, or after, or summarize the above, that can make a difference in the output. So even the order of a few short examples can matter. So this this technique is known as recency bias. So if, let's say, you give it a whole paragraph and you say summarize the above versus starting with the actual specific action saying summarize the following, it does influence the type of output that you may get. So also play around with those to see what works best for you, and include a few words or phrases that end the prompt to obtain a model response. So yeah, and also give the model an out, right? Because sometimes I don't know, like from my own experience, like sometimes when you're playing with prompts, you may feel like it doesn't know when to stop, really. Like it's going further than the task that you would have asked it to do. So it's very helpful if you can give the model an alternative path, so that if it's not able to complete what you've asked it to do, then it can at least have some recommendations, or ask with or like come up with something like, if this wasn't found, then say the answer isn't present. So this technique will always help the model to avoid generating false responses. So give the model an out. um, and then last but definitely not least, always chain your thought prompting. So the model is instructed to proceed step by step and present all the steps involved. So doing so reduces the possibilities of inaccuracies in terms of the outcomes that you can expect, as well as it makes it easy for the model to be able uh, to respond, and you can also it can assess and respond accordingly. So do practice your prompting, and yeah, play around with it, and we hope to see you build some really amazing stuff. And then last but not least, I saw a question around complexity uh, of projects. So I thought it would be good maybe for us to also share the Azure samples, OpenAI .NET samples that are available for you on GitHub. So we're just going to present the link for you so that you can be able to access all the samples. So over here, they've got a great number of samples, like the mood to color one, and you can use these. I like the fact that they're all um, they edit them as Jupyter notebooks, so you can already play around with them yourself, see what the output is like. And yeah, so there's one for creating study notes, there's one for creating interview questions, there's a whole lot, there's one for grammar correction or a JavaScript helper chatbot. Yeah, please have a look, see which scenario aligns to what you're trying to do. There's a recipe creator. You can really make some fun stuff by just giving it random ingredients and seeing what type of recipe it'll come up with. So Homer's laughing because he can cook. So I think for that he'd enjoy it more than me probably, because yeah, I wouldn't really know much there. Another cool one is the science fiction book list maker one that they have. So have a look at them, play around with them. The turn by turn directions is also a good one, because I know when people enter hackathon, sometimes they want to make use of maps, and in case you've got very specific scenarios that you want to apply those to, these samples will definitely come in handy. And feel free to contribute and add your own, right? That's why we open these things up onto GitHub. So make them your own, create more, share more, and yeah, that's it really.
I know. Thank you so much for those samples. And I think samples are a great place to start, especially if you don't know how to use these resources or how to prompt properly. So this is a great place for you to learn about how to get to the bottom of that. So I think with that, if there's no other questions, I think we can go ahead and end the chat, the
Yeah,
live
thank
stream.
you so
Sorry.
much, Homo. Yeah, thank you so much. Like I heard you talking about pizza. I don't know if I'm hungry or what, but I think yeah, it's time for dinner here in South Africa. So so we'll pretend we've just done that 8 mile hike that you were taking us through. But that's a really amazing demo that you did, and thank you for making it, so effortless for us by showing us step by step, from going into the Azure OpenAI Studio, showing people how to install the .NET SDK so that they can make use of Azure OpenAI in their .NET projects. So yeah, let's go and build intelligent apps. So from us in South Africa, it's good night.
Cheers, guys.